Like it's so functionally crazy that you could have a guy who dubiously represents a very small fraction of the Democratic Party, likely almost only found in safe states that are always going to have Democratic candidates, and somehow he is getting courted positively by Democrats, and he's openly saying, yeah, the further left, some of the farthest left candidates that are available for a presidential general, not primary, I won't vote for them. I mean, it's Democrats deserve what they get.
I don't think it's real, though. I don't think there, especially in this day and age when there are so many different platforms that you can be on.
I mean, it's absolutely real. It's just that it's very, very difficult to get deplatformed if you're very to the left on a lot of these platforms. It's just true. Like, that is not the kind of candidate that the DSA usually runs. And more out of power, it's really, really when the left is out of power electorally, it's much harder to do media messaging that's anti-democrat as your core. You have to like try to occupy the party, and like he won't be voting for this list of people for as 2028 candidates. I wanted to see the full context because there's no way he is saying that Kamala Harris, oh God, no, or Pete Buttigieg over JD Vance. There's no way is what he means. So we're gonna, watch the whole thing.
All these fascist forces in this country are screaming from the rooftops, and they chose the issue of Israel to attack me on, which is the most base uniting position. They took a 90-10 issue and chose to be on the 10% side of this 90-10 issue.
Hasan Piker's name has been everywhere lately. Not for winning an election, not for passing legislation, not for doing anything really, except for yapping. And depending on who you ask, he's either one of the most dangerous voices in American politics or one of the most honest.
It's not just for yapping. He's a pundit. Like he's a lot of, if not influence, so he takes up a lot of the media's time.
Hasan is among one of the biggest voices on the American left. His megaphone is a Twitch stream where he spends about 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, breaking down political news to an audience that skews young and male. And if you listen to him long enough, you can see why. He's blunt, if not crass.
Does it actually skew male, like in a distinct way? I've never seen that stuff.
He toes the line between relatable and aspirational. He's deeply influential, and of course, he's controversial.
This is a thug. This is an extremist. This is an advocate for terrorism.
Which is why some factions of the Democratic Party have been beefing with him for the last few weeks, pointing to off-color comments he's made over the years. I sat down with Hasan Piker to talk about exactly that. We talked about why Fox News.
It's not about the off-color comments. It's about the political content of them. The vulgarity is one thing, and some people complain about the anti-Semitism, but it's more that the content is radical. It's very, very radical.
Can't stop covering him, the ideological battles inside the Democratic Party, what he really thinks about Israel, and what, if anything, the Democrats could do to earn his vote in 2028. This is my chat with Hasan Piker. Enjoy.
Again, earn his vote in 2028? Bro, look at how bad the first 2 years of Trump have been. How could, this guy is not on the left side, clearly, or he's not a Democrat Party person.
Piker, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting. I'm a big fan of your work.
Oh, thank you.
Very excited to be on.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Well, I guess this is an interesting way to start, which is that you talk a lot, man. You talk respectfully, right? You talk, it's the job. But I wonder, what do you think has contributed the most to your kind of current position in the national media spotlight? If I were to kind of give you a few options, I think obviously the out of context clip economy is an option here. Maybe you talk about Israel and Palestine and progressive things.
They're not ever out of context, by the way, just to be clear. Almost every time someone on the left says the Hasan clip is out of context, what it means is that they like the context, they support the context.
And conservative things. But what would you say has kind of put you at the center of the discourse?
I mean, it's hard to figure out exactly what is the highest offense because I have an anti-imperialist framework. I'm socialist. These are not exactly ideas that a lot of people are fond of hearing, especially, corporate-backed mainstream institutions. And then,
by the way, this also isn't really true. On the left, people are very, very open. The Democratic Party, people are very, very open to socialist rhetoric. The problem is the third worldism. It's the support of terrorism.
My position on Israel, of course, is also very frustrating for a lot of people. But I would say that the fact that I speak on a contentious format that is very interactive on polarizing issues from a perspective that is of the left, a perspective that many Americans are either unfamiliar with or taught to be antagonistic towards, combine all of that, and of course, you're going to have an inevitability such as this.
I guess on a personal level, how are you processing the onslaught of criticism? I mean, we'll get into the politics of it all in a bit, but I'm curious how you're doing personally. This is the first one, but this one's been maybe a bit different. Would you agree?
Yeah, but it's been different, not in a negative way.
It's different because his PR firm has gotten him to, a pretty high point of popularity.
It's actually been quite positive. I don't find these last couple of weeks.
By popular, I mean people in the media who otherwise wouldn't have known about him because Twitch is such a separate thing. It's becoming more integrated in mainstream discourse, even if his viewership numbers are the same as they've been for years.
I mean, I find it strange that it's been going on for the past couple of weeks. Nothing goes on for more than 4 days in America. In our current news cycle, this has been the most resilient thing. And I think it's partially because, you know, I'm live all the time. So I'm obviously going to give Fox News more ammo every single day, as they have been. They've been updating the RNC research department is constantly posting new clips of me every day. I even joked.
But they never talk about like it being Hasan. It's a way to attack Democrats. It's because they can use Hasan as like a cutout to say, look at what this chief Democrat is saying. Meanwhile, it seems like this is going to be an interview about how the Democratic Party hasn't even earned his vote.
About it at the Yale Union last night, where I was like, you know, today we're going to talk about the resolution in the American Empire, and then tomorrow your grandparents are going to hear about it on Fox News, which is literally happening right now. So I guess that's a big part of it as well. Maybe some Republicans think this is a great opportunity to like tie someone that they consider to be radical to the Democratic Party so they can attack the Democratic Party. And then there's plenty of right-wing forces in the Democratic Party who also recognize that there's like an ideological battle within the party itself. The idea that we talk about, like big tent or, you know, who's in the tent, whatnot, all this stuff actually is a pretty basic spiritual fight that the Democrats have conducted, and the centrists have.
I mean, he's right in the sense that like what he's doing, he's one of the only people who actually is aware of what's going on when he comes on the Democratic spaces, which is it's trying he's trying to get his faction, which would be like Marxist, to become a more dominant faction in the Democratic Party, not to ally with them, but to control the party, to either have them move in their direction or to literally control it, which doesn't seem to be what most Democrat officials who talk to him think is what he's trying to do for whatever reason.
Successfully defeated the left flank over and over again up until recently. That's the heart of it.
Could you name that spiritual fight? Like, what are the two sides of that fight?
Yeah, I mean, we saw probably the most visible version of this in 2016. It was Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was an establishment Democrat.
Again, like maybe they're both just dumb. It's not a two-side spiritual fight. There's a lot of different factions at play. There's more so in the Republican Party and their factional disputes. But for Democrats, you'll have blue dog Democrats who are the more moderate, if not conservative Democrats. You have the core Democrats, which are people like the CNN viewer base, the people who vote blue no matter who lean, you know, they might lean right in some ways, but left in some ways. They're just the typical Democrats. You have the progressives who are still liberals, but they are, you know, pushing generally for very, very progressive social reform, if not also economic reform, but they lean more social. They're id poll obsessed. That's where a lot of the woke stuff comes from, is like those types of people where their major concerns seem to be id poll. And you have socialists who, again, care about id poll, but these are people who, you know, see themselves still maybe as liberal in some way, or, you know, oftentimes anti-Marxist, anti-fascist, but they're still socialists. That's like the Bernie supporters, generally speaking. And then you have Marxists. You know, those are a totally separate group of people. Those are communists. They're people who don't care about id poll, and they're people who want to, you know, undermine the Constitution, get rid of the Constitution because it prevents a Marxist revolution, you know, or at the very least to get the United States out of the way from other countries that have more potential for revolution. So Hasan's in that Marxist camp, so he's really oppositional to almost everyone further right than the DSA.
Very right-wing on many issues that pertain to the economy, right? Definitely socially progressive, but has switched that around as well. Much more malleable to right-wing forces, not coming at the issue from a place of consistent moral principles, but more so just like focus tested. The type of person that you think of when you say establishment, the type of person that you think of when you see, when you think about someone who's a spokesperson for a bank. And then on the other side, you had Bernie Sanders. Love him or hate him, he's honest, right? Like, this is what he believes. He's been fighting for the same exact battle for 80 plus years. He was earnest, sometimes too stubborn, sometimes came across as like a curmudgeon, but it's authentically him. And of
That's
course,
true. I really dislike Bernie, but he's right. He's authentic. That's why he's got nothing done in Congress, and Clinton got quite a lot done.
of course, ideologically, he's on the left. Pro-worker, pro-labor unions, Medicare for all, free college education, things like that. I mean, these were identifiable policies that people associate with him. Bernie Sanders was able to unite.
Again, what's weird is that, like, that's not really what makes him further to the left. It's because of the rationalization for those opinions. But a lot of blue dog Democrats will be in some ways more pro-free stuff, or like, for instance, like blue dog Democrats will go hard on deregulating certain things or reducing government red tape. So like someone like Bernie Sanders will make building houses a lot harder oftentimes if they're not accommodating for affordable housing, while blue dog Dems will want much more housing available for the middle class through projects that might give developers more money but also create more homes. So it's not as simple as he wants to give you all this nice free stuff.
A lot of people, but more importantly, he was able to offer the language and maybe even begin the political journey for a lot of people. I mean, even including people like Zohran Mamdani, who openly admits like Bernie Sanders is what caused him to realize like, oh, maybe I'm a democratic socialist. That was pretty big. It's pretty big for the DSA. It's pretty big for, I think, Western left to a certain degree. Definitely huge for the American left movement. And now we're seeing the fruits of that a decade later.
Yeah, I want to come back to the policy stuff in a bit, but I do want to hold on you here for another kind of beat. It feels like maybe there's an effort to cancel you, but I don't know how you're perceiving that. Do you feel, do you think there's an effort to cancel you, to deplatform you? And if so, why? So why not?
Cancellation, I don't think is real. I'll just say it. I don't think it's real. I mean, sometimes I wish it was, because there's a lot of people I'm like, we shouldn't listen to this guy. And perhaps that's how Jake Tapper feels about me.
Anti-Israel, anti-Semitic. So why are so many Democrats doing campaign events with him?
I personally feel that way about, like, I don't know, 90% of the dudes I have to deal with in the space that I'm in. You know, the Andrew Tates, the claviculars, the Sneekos of the world. And that's why they think I'm a woke scold, a joy killer, annoying left person that's censorious.
Why do you guys talk about a bunch of people who like aren't really political? Like, Sneeko has politics stuff, but like, he's the most political out of those people. But like, maybe talk about that was weird. That was weird. That was a little
But those are the trenches I'm fighting in. I don't think it's real though. I don't think especially in this day and age when there are so many different platforms that you can be on.
I mean, it's absolutely real. It's just that it's very, very difficult to get deplatformed if you're very to the left on a lot of these platforms. It's just true. Like, if you're not like if you're not like calling for violence, which even he does a lot, like, it's hard to get deplatformed from that. So like, but there is a lot of people calling for it. It just won't happen. Like, he would have been deplatformed from Twitch at this point if they were listening to the popular messaging and just that clearly the people at Twitch are fans of him.
You can claw yourself back to relevancy, as Nick Fuentes clearly did. I mean, he got hit with the full scope of deplatforming at a time when people were like, oh, that's a white nationalist neo-Nazi. Like, we're not going to, I mean, he's an open white nationalist neo-Nazi. We're just not going to put him on our platforms. Like, it doesn't exist anymore. And cancel culture, on top of that, I think only works if your audience decides, like, if your people decide that you're not serious or you've done something worthy of cancel.
It's just not, like, he's kind of right, but like, he's missing the fact that, like, sometimes you get removed from a platform, you get canceled by the fact that your base, like, your viewership won't come with you. Like, it's very difficult for like Fuentes to come back after getting deplatformed. They had to kind of start from ground zero almost.
Like, the things that people want to cancel me over, quote unquote, cancel me over on, CNN.
And then more importantly, like with Fuentes, a great example is that, like, he was pretty irrelevant for a while. Even just kind of like, he was able to stay afloat in the background, but he was pretty irrelevant. Like, his true comeback in the last couple of years has been due to the ability for his clips to go viral on Instagram, like, constantly. But it's because Instagram allows those clips to be posted and to remain up. Like, that's explicitly why. So, like, to say canceling and deplatforming isn't, massively going to impact sort of the viability of that stuff is just it's either he's either just lying or doesn't know.
Are ridiculous. That's why people listen to me. They'll be like, oh, he's vulgar.
You have become an issue within the Democratic Party yourself. Tell us about that. I don't think I'm necessarily an issue within the Democratic Party as much as I am an issue for a lot of consultants.
Yeah, I speak for 21,000. I've spoken on Twitch for 21,000 hours. And
again, the majority of the Democratic Party is extremely liberal. Capital L liberal. Like, you are anti them. You are absolutely not a part of that.
Yes, I'm vulgar. I'm vulgar towards right-wingers. I'm vulgar towards reactionaries. I'm going to bully bullies. That's kind of the whole point of why people are watching me. And then they'll be like, oh, he's vulgar towards people who defend Israel. It's like, yeah, I'm an anti-Zionist. And guess what? So is 90% of the party's base at this point. Maybe not to the same degree, but like, people don't like Israel. So that's the second reason why I think this entire...
When he says they're anti-Zionist, it's just not true. If you look at polling, they're anti-Bibi Netanyahu. They're anti-Likud party. They're anti-right-wing Israeli. Vast majority of the Democratic Party, especially with how many Gen Xers and boomers are still alive. Or boomers, I mean. Gen Xers are pretty young still. But, like, remember, like, the majority of the actively voting Democratic Party is Gen X and boomers, and they are super pro-Israel. Super pro-Israel. Like, they are two-staters. They support Israel's right to exist or whatever, but they're just anti-Netanyahu, anti-Likud.
Hasan is a danger. We must stay away from him. Narrative has been so funny because, like, even from the start, I had a lot of people calling me up. Two funny things happened. One, a bunch of politicians hit me up to be like, "Hey, I hope you're doing all right." I'm not going to reveal. A bunch of people in politics hit me up to be like, "Hey, I hope you're doing all right. I know things are, I know things are hectic, right? It's never great to be on the receiving end of this like barrage of hate." And I was like, "I'm chill, like I'm cool." And they were like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "This is great for me. These guys don't even understand. This is a marketing campaign, pretty much. You got Fox News and corporate Democrats, AIPAC, AD."
The question is, when you say it's good for you, like, where's the conversion? Because like his viewership numbers are the same, and he's still behind Asmongold, and Asmongold on an alt account. Like, it's just like. Is it good for you? I mean, it keeps you relevant, I guess, but is it?
Third way, all of my enemies, all of the people whose politics I find to be repulsive, all these undemocratic forces in this country, all these fascist forces in this country are screaming from the rooftops. And they chose the issue of Israel to attack me on, which is the
undemocratic. When he wants to get rid of democracy, he wants to install, a dictatorship of the proletariat or whatever.
Most like base uniting position. They took a 90-10 issue and chose to be on the 10% side of this 90-10 issue.
It's not a 90-10 issue. It's impressive he gets to lie about it, but it's not 90-10.
So yeah, they can yell at me every day, but it's going to backfire on them, which it did, which is why they then started trying to shift the narrative to Hasan is dangerous in many other different ways, ideologically dangerous in many other different ways. And also we should probably stop talking about him. He's just irrelevant. It was like, well, we're on the fourth week now.
I mean, again, like if you show the Democratic Party voting base a guy saying he's a harm reductionist voter, and that means he won't publicly vote for Kamala over Trump, but he would vote for Hamas over Israel. If they see that statement, they would say yes, he's a danger to the party. But they
Like,
just won't
why
hear
are you
that.
still talking about it? Yeah, I'm irrelevant. Give it up.
I find it genuinely interesting that two of the loudest anti-Zionist voices in American media right now are you and Tucker Carlson. It feels like you guys are almost like the most prominent, loudest, most consistent voices against Zionism and against what Israel is doing in the world. And what do you make of the rise of anti-Zionism on the right?
I wouldn't even say Tucker Carlson would call himself an anti-Zionist. He'd be like, anti-Zionist? I don't even know what that means. He'd be like, I love Israel. You won't hear me say that, okay? Like, let me tell you, I'm not, like, from my assessment, a country is not always going to be representative of every single individual in it, but like a country can be representative of an ideology. And I think Israel has evolved into its last stage of fascism at this point. Tucker clearly doesn't feel that way.
Like such a weird thing of saying something like that. Like, what does that even mean? You think Israel is going to dissolve at the last stage of fascism? Like the last stage of Israeli fascism is where you have 20% of your population is Arab. They have the same rights as every other citizen, and you also have Arab representation in the parliamentary government. Like, and then that Arab constituency probably supports the security aims of the Israeli right. Like, this is just like such a like uncritical, like even if you're anti-Israel, like just lying like that means you either have no idea what you're talking about or you're just like making stuff up to hope it flies over people's heads and you can just will into existence this 90-10 consensus that doesn't exist.
I think Tucker is a very dangerous propagandist. He has a higher priority for always pushing the platform of what I like to call WASP nationalism.
Does anybody really believe, any adult actually think that white racism is the biggest?
Tucker's WASP nationalism of the early 2000s is well and alive in his blatant third worldism now, where he's aligning with people like Alexander Dugin, who is literally as explicitly anti-white as possible. He doesn't see the Russians as being white. He sees there being the necessity for third worldism. And Tucker Carlson is probably aligning himself with that. And Islamic society broader, more and more. Like, yeah, WASP nationalism, bro. Come on.
Problem in America's inner cities.
We saw a version of his room reading and his capabilities of being that dangerous propagandist, like normalizing the Great Replacement theory and numerous other white supremacist talking points on the main stage, when all the way back in 2016, when he was the most popular Fox News broadcaster, the most popular news network in the country, he regularly talked about economic populism. He would talk about workers' rights.
Today it's McDonald's employees, tomorrow will be millions of truck and taxi drivers with self-driving cars. Eventually it will be lawyers and physicians and so on. Will everybody
Like again, but the idea of trying to interject Tucker Carlson's from Fox News with Tucker Carlson post Fox News, he has ideologically become like almost the opposite of what he was then. It's just this kind of like uncritical stuff. It's you have to assume everyone involved in these sort of videos is just malicious, like extremely malicious.
paper columnists and cable news anchors? We're praying not.
And then he would associate that agenda with legacy Americans, with what his version of making white nationalism more palatable. Instead of saying like white Americans, he would say legacy Americans, because he can't say Native Americans, obviously. So he's doing that with Israel. I think that's my assessment. I can't know what's in his heart, because sometimes he will say things or he will do certain things. Like when he went to the Palestinian Children's Hospital in Qatar, I was like, I think maybe this might have changed him a little bit. Like he might be sincere in his advocacy on that issue sometimes, but I still see him as a dangerous propagandist for a repulsive, very toxic ideology that's ironically not dissimilar to the one demonstrated in Israel through Zionism. It's just there's a different in-group and a different out-group. Now, that's the way I see Tucker's version of events. A lot of people get mad at me. I think he's even more popular than myself, certainly, and maybe even more popular at this stage on the issue of Israel as well.
You say that Israel is entering like its final stage of fascism. What do you mean by that?
Zionism, from its inception, has been an ideology that is an ethno-religious supremacist ideology. There's an in-group, there's an out-group dynamic. It's identical to
Again, but you can call it ethno-religious, but non-supremacist. It doesn't make any sense. You'd have to actually have like the idea that you have something that's supremacist, and then other ethnic groups have the same rights as you do if they're citizens. That's just, you can say it's ethno. It's an ethno state where they're trying to maintain a Jewish majority, but you can't just lie about like the supremacy part unless you're like that. That's an example of sort of the evil propaganda that he would accuse Carlson of if he's describing, things like that from like a right-wing perspective.
historic fascist movements. And at its inception, there was the Nakba, a lot of violence that took place leading up to the Nakba, and certainly during the Nakba.
There's two sides to the Nakba.
In 47 and 48, where 750,000 indigenous Palestinians were expelled from their homes, ethnic cleansing, and they were never allowed to return back to their houses, right? That was an
same time you have quite a lot of Jews from that area being cleansed from, old settlements as well as, family homes, while also having, pogroms across the Middle East. Like, it's not that simple.
Violent event. And there have been times where Israel has spiritually continued that process, but Israel has maintained an apartheid for 80 years.
Spiritually Israeli.
This point, since
awesome.
the inception.
You just be racist on the left, and there's no issue with it.
Of Israel. And the apartheid practice is obviously racially discriminatory and devastating for the almost 15 million Palestinians that live all around the world, some of which are not allowed to return to the occupied territories, and some of which currently live under the oppressive Israeli apartheid state, half in the West Bank, occupied Palestinian territory, and half in Gaza, which is a hermetically sealed open-air prison.
Open-air prison, right.
Yeah. So that practice has been going on, whether Americans pay attention to it or not. And it's one that, Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, many other figures have correctly pointed out as apartheid. These are people who have fought against apartheid in Africa, right?
This is a good place for me to then kind of actually double back.
The difference being like in South Africa, these were both like citizen groups. These were intra-citizens, meaning that like the white South Africans were legally oppressing a group by denying them equal rights or whatever. Like that's a very different process from occupied territories that are trying to establish independence. Like these are, you can say they're both bad, but like it's to call it apartheid is just it misses the point of apartheid. The bad part about apartheid was not just the fact that these people didn't have the same rights. The problem was it was a unequal distribution of rights to citizens. It's sort of a distinct sort of like no-no of any nation state. But Israel explicitly doesn't do that with their Arab citizens. That's the whole issue. It would be different if they were just trying to occupy. It would be different if they claimed to annex like the West Bank, but they're not. That's the issue. Like the settlements might be types of annexation, but they're not annexing areas and then trying to integrate the Arabs as citizens with different rights.
Because I want to ask you about
like if you
why do you
today
think,
with how the way Israel works, say they annex the West Bank, and the reason they won't, this is the reason why they're not annexing it, that's why they're doing the settlement strategy. If they annex the West Bank, all of those Arabs would have to become citizens. They won't do it for that reason, right? It would be so simple to annex it because it's already occupied territory. Like, but they won't do it, and it's because they don't want to do apartheid because they know it wouldn't be sustainable on the world stage.
Democrats have such a hard time accepting you, a person like you, into their ranks. I look at Graham Plattner, who, similar to you, has said some disagreeable, if not like outright awful, terrible, bad things in this past, or Jeff Duncan, who championed like legitimately awful policy in Georgia. And it appears that there's room for those people. Obviously, everyone's talking about Liz Cheney on the campaign trail with Vice President Kamala Harris. So there's space for those folks, but why not a person like you? For some Democrats.
Well, a couple things. First of all, I think a lot of the people who hate me also hate Graham Plattner. So there are a lot of Democrats who also are like, don't vote for
I mean, they're just not similar at all. Plattner also is like almost like borderline Marxist aligned, but like Plattner is a very like he's a very like authentic candidate in the sense that like he's got like a whole thing. He's got a whole angle where it's like he's very responsive to the state he's from. Like it's why he's so pro-gun, like someone like Hasan, and he doesn't do idpol really. The reason that someone like Hasan is uniquely repulsive is because he'll do something like support terrorists in like a third worldist Marxist sense, but then do idpol the next day because if it benefits him. So it's like this really nasty sort of distribution of like there's something very off about it. Like you feel it when you're listening to him. It's super off. But with something like Plattner, like a lot of people don't like him, and I would say again, like you see the messaging around Plattner, people see him as a much more real, tangible threat than Hasan. It's why Hasan is a uniquely aesthetically revolting vibe to him.
Graham Plattner. And even then, I feel like I don't have the same past as Graham Plattner. I mean, not his like Reddit posts. I don't care about that stuff. But I'm talking about like his experience, going to war and maybe even joining.
And that past gives him a lot of credibility with the voter. That's why he's seen as a threat. You don't have any of that credibility.
Blackwater, like I feel like there's some red flags there. We're having a totem cop tattoo.
Just a small red flag.
There's stuff that I have also personally been like, that's an insane thing. I can't believe nobody stopped that or called you out for having a Nazi tattoo on your chest. But like, I actually do find Graham Plattner to be one of the most interesting candidates. And he is again another Bernie-crat. And I obviously have some sympathies for that. And I think that he is the perfect guy to prove something that we've been saying for many, many years, which is that you can actually take out a red state Republican senator or, purple state with left populism. And he's the proof, which is, I think, the real reason why a lot of people get mad at Graham Plattner. I think Plattner is a much better candidate than Mills. Mills is horrible as a candidate, but like, is a real question. Like, can he win Maine against Collins? Like, I don't know. Maybe the unpopularity of the Trump administration gives him the opportunity, but like, also, like Plattner is a very unique candidate compared to other leftists that Hasan will advocate for to be in power or to win elections, because like it's not the easiest pill to swallow, but like it's a lot easier to sell left-wing populism, especially economic populism, when it's combined with like this burly looking white dude with a deep voice with a military record and who's also very soft on a lot of pro-Republican issues like gun rights and talks about things like transgenderism in a very like understandable manner. Like that is not the kind of candidate that the DSA usually runs. And more importantly, it's the kind of candidate that will probably not be on the DSA party line on everything. He will bend on the things that are, that would make him competitive in a state like Maine. So it's not comparable to like take him and then compare like that sort of campaign to like any of the Bernie acolytes, because they ran on those specifically unpopular platforms with unpopular aesthetics. Like, and on the basis that they wouldn't bend the party line, Plattner had that background as a machine gunner, had the totem cloth tattoo on his chest. but then was talking about sensible policy around healthcare. Let's talk about affordability. Let's not talk about free healthcare. If he was like, saying, I will never take APEC funding, but Israel is our most valuable ally, not a single one of these Democratic Party consultants that have been freaking out about him would say a damn thing. Okay, they wouldn't. Same thing goes for me. The reason why a lot of people are yelling at me on the Democratic Party side is because of what I represent. They don't want to hear from people like me. They don't want to hear that people like me have a big audience. They don't want to hear that people like me are representative of large forces in the party. They don't want to hear that at all. They want to live in an echo chamber, live in a totally separate reality where Americans will forget about Israel. They won't talk about our relationship with this country. They won't talk about genocide, and they'll just vote for the Democrats for harm reduction reasons, right?
Insane thing to think. Like, you understand that in general, no one really cares about foreign policy. Like, it's people should probably start to wonder, or at least publicly question, why is the Israel question so important for them?
It's very clear that that's what they wanted to do in 2024. It failed. I mean, you saw me at the DNC. I was running around telling them, don't do this. You're going to lose. Like, this is terrifying. You guys are celebrating for no reason.
We are still never been provided with any of that information on how anyone could construe that was the reason why Kamala lost. Like, there's no public reporting, no public polling, no anything. Just as the only state where it could have mattered was Michigan, and that was not why she lost. So
you're doing end zone dances, but it's not a guarantee at all. And by the final day of the DNC, when I heard Kamala Harris's speech, after I'd already got my press credentials revoked as well for some of the things I was saying about the DNC not having a Palestinian speaker, I heard Kamala Harris say, I'm going to oversee the most lethal military. I was like, this is so bad. It's over. Like, this is going to be devastating. And it turned out to be true. Democrats want to go back to business as usual politics, where they don't have to be responsive, where they don't have to change their methods, because they want to keep collecting corporate donations. They don't want to do their jobs. They don't want to actually represent their constituents. They just want to be the marginally better alternative to the growth of fascism in this country.
In a way, I think they're
better. Like, the gulf between the Trump admin and the Biden admin is so immense at every level, from policy to aesthetics to whatever. Like, doing both sidesing like that in the neocon era actually makes a lot of sense, because these were the neocons and neoliberals were people that really did have core ideological similarities that kept them pretty tied to one another. But so the debates were more about policy or whatever, or international policy especially. But that is not the case with Trump or any of the factions. Like, comparing truly not, I wouldn't say fascist, but fascistic ideologies like post-liberalism or Groypers or other types of America First, or the third world is like the Sneeko types. And then even the Trump core base, the way that they've changed the dynamics of the Republican Party. To say that it is marginally different, it's just you can think it's an irrelevant difference, but marginally, it's just it's like a blatant lie.
There's this sense out there that you are so against Democrats. So why do you even make an effort? Why do you even caucus with these folks? Why are you trying to help certain Democrats get elected? Why not go out and do something totally different? That's kind of a Twitter kind of conversation, kind of criticism that I see of you. What's your response to that?
Well, you gotta go where the base is. In the United States of America, the overwhelming
not true. It's because his career is fucked. That's the real answer. When you're out of power, it's really, really when the left is out of power electorally, it's much harder to do media messaging that's anti-democrat as your core. You have to try to occupy the party, and he doesn't care about political power. It's more about the brand. It's just a difficult message to sell if you're not doing this.
Base are they're self-identifying liberals. They might not actually be liberals when you dial in and figure out exactly the things that they would advocate for, the things that they would believe. I obviously my perspective, it comes from a Marxist tradition. I see things from a class perspective, or at least a class first perspective.
Again, at least we're being honest about this. But again, Democrats who collaborate should then be asked that question: why are you collaborating uncritically with the Marxists?
There are elements, especially in American politics, that are very relevant, like race. Whether I like to admit it or not, most Americans are liberal. They self-identify as liberal, and this even includes
almost all, 99%.
Republicans as well. You have to talk to people with the language they understand if you want to mobilize them. If you want to make them a more productive social force, a force for change.
This is true, at least.
And
being honest
the
about
Democratic Party is a much closer vehicle, or a much closer agent for that change, even if it will never be a workers' party.
It reminds me of something that Angela Davis said during the 2024 election, which is that electing Kamala Harris would allow for more radical kind of organizing in the future. It's kind of the argument that she made for voting for Kamala Harris. And you said something that I want to kind of hold on, because out of all the things that you've kind of faced criticism for, the things that you said, in my kind of corner of the internet, there are a couple of clips going around. I'm on the black corner of the internet, and a couple of clips are going around of you being pretty dismissive to black folks kind of in your comment section. There's the root.com kind of comment that you made, which was a completely unnecessary blow to the root. Come on, man, the root's doing good work.
Sometimes root.com article regurgitators in here instantly being like, sweetie, you don't understand black people.
So you said this thing at the end of your kind of rant about standpoint theory. And I think a common critique of leftists is that they can be a bit class reductionist and dismiss the race and racism kind of issues at play in America, which you just touched on. And I want to know what your perspective is there, because there's a real critique out there that Hasan,
just to be clear, Hasan does not care about any of this at all. And when he does pay lip service to it, it's just, again, like it's because he understands Idpol is really important to sell the message to a broader audience.
Piker is anti-black after those clips have played. And I want you to respond to that criticism specifically.
Of course. So I'm not, but I understand why, as we talked about already, in short bursts, when you clip something, when I'm talking for 21,000 hours, very easy to present me as something I'm not. The inception of this was, ironically enough, many, many years ago when I ratioed Nicki Minaj. That's when Black Twitter was like, fuck this guy. Can I curse on the show? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can curse. You're free. Be free.
Nicki Minaj famously talked about her cousin's balls.
Yeah.
And I tweeted something back, and I was like, the world is awaiting your scientific contributions, something like that. And I ratioed her, and I got the attention of the Barbs. And back then, they were a much more powerful force. Now the Barbs are in shambles. I feel like finally, as she totally leaned into the Trump administration and is doing whatever she's doing now, that discourse is now over. But at the time, Barbs were very mad at me because I was in the process of replying to her about her allegiance with Tucker Carlson, being like, Nicki Minaj, like, Tucker Carlson's a white supremacist. Like, what are you doing? And everybody got mad at me. They're like, this is a black woman. You're talking over a black woman. You think a black woman doesn't know who a white supremacist is. And there is this reactionary attitude that I think some Americans have, even some black Americans do. Obviously, they've experienced white supremacy. That's the primary anti-blackness is the primary form of hatred that persists, and it's become fairly sophisticated in the ways that it is demonstrated through every orifice of.
It's baking it back into class analysis. I don't know if people notice what he's doing here, but this is like one of the more clever things he can do. He's sometimes, I don't know if you just pay attention enough reading to kind of get this, but what he's doing there is he's absorbing because this is such a friendly platform and far left enough that you can do this without it being super alienating. He's taking like the Idpol angle, so like the perspective, the viewpoint based analysis, meaning that like accounting for lived experience and racism and systemic injustice or whatever. And he's explaining how you can reduce that into a class-based analysis still, where the perspective matters still, but that you're confusing like white supremacy as some independent vehicle that in fact it's tied to the capital class, and that the capital holding class, it deploys white supremacy. It's he's not doing it like super well, but like it's not like academically rigorous, but it's a very like good rhetorical strategy to kind of get this idea baked into people, so you can say, well, no, you can still be anti-racist and you can still have that as like a structural focus, but it's because it's class based. Like you're able to do both, like because the foundation is class. But the real problem electorally with that, and like the real reality bending issue, is why leftists really get frustrated with black people, is that like black Americans, especially black men, are very big into capitalism because they are very big into entrepreneurship. Like that is just something that like has been resilient since before the civil rights era. Like it's not about like they don't agree with the class-based analysis, broadly speaking, and that was a challenge that even black Marxists were not able to overcome when there was much more salience for those issues, when there was much more material differences between communities, intra-race, let alone extra-race. Like the simple fact is that black communities just want more opportunity. They don't really care about this class-based discussion. Like the Idpol will work, but this will never work probably in our lifetime. Like you would need to see such immense structural changes to black electoral politics that like it's like not even worth, like you can just be honest and say there's not a demographic we're going to reach.
American existence, right? You don't have to just straight up say certain slurs or make certain comparisons, although Trump will do it every now and then, like with the Barack and Michelle Obama AI video. While still being able to get that message across that you are anti-black, right? Urban style individuals, the utilization of terms like thug, or even as Lee Atwater famously said, welfare, like attacking certain policies in an effort to attack black people without ever mentioning black people whatsoever. So these two issues are directly aligned with one another, because anti-blackness, while the identification of it is on racial boundaries, the impact of it is still very much class violence, right?
Yeah,
like
there it is.
It turns back into a class issue at the end of the day.
Well,
Black people are overwhelmingly a part of the
explain
working
it,
class.
but
Ironically enough, in modern America, black people are also black people have the highest union participation rate amongst all of the different ethnic and racial groups in this country.
This is another
because
issue, is that when he talks about unions, like he's talking about it in the goal of like union class displacing capital, but like the union class in America, private union enrollment has decreased so much over time. So like, again, that has to be a goal. That's a goal for a lot of socialists or social democrats, is to increase private unionship. But again, these are people who are mega capitalists still. Like they're not thinking like they don't want to have like the means of production. They want a fair share is what they think. Like they want their companies to make more money. They want their communities to become richer, but they want it to be based around hard work, so that like the harder you work, the more money you get, not that to displace the capital, whatever. Especially for like black union workers. Like it's a much less extravagant process. It's just about fairness. These are so capitalist. These are so liberals.
work in these jobs for the most part. So like the violence that black people experience, the targeting is racial, but the violence they experience is still class violence, right? So that's my broader perspective. And as far as standpoint epistemology goes, or at least we're going to talk about root.com, one of the things that I've seen, and maybe I shouldn't be saying some of these things because I'm white, but there is anti-blackness in every aspect of American society, including in liberal commentary. And my criticisms of Root sometimes revolves around not identical, but somewhat similar versions of anti-blackness that I see and hear from Republicans, but that is maybe demonstrated in a more liberal adjacent way. And my common critique always is around the way that black men are portrayed in some liberal circles. Black men in general are still infinitely more progressive than white men are. Like, that's such a ridiculous thing. And we see versions of this. We saw versions of this with even like Barack Obama coming out and saying, if you don't want to vote
like, what is this? Like, are we just making this up? I've never seen anything that would indicate that, like, objectively. Like, what are we talking about?
Kamala Harris,
like, you say this and then like like black men like have absurdly high rates of homophobia when it comes to electoral politics. Like, Pete Buttigieg is at 0% in almost every poll for black men because of their homophobia. Like, sorry, bro, it's just a fact. Like, to call them one of the most progressive voting groups is just like, I don't even know if they're economically progressive.
Man, like, you might just be a little misogynistic. Like, what are you doing? And I thought that was also a ridiculous thing to say. Now, of course, I'm white. Barack Obama is black, and not only is he black, he was the president, right? So he's a profoundly important figure. So when
I like how he'll morph from. Sometimes he's Muslim and brown. Sometimes he's white.
I say something like that, I think people hear that and go, "You're way too confident, white boy." Right? You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be saying things like that. So there have been instances like that where my advocacy or the things that I talk about will rub people the wrong way. I understand that.
I think people who watch your stream, they'll see folks like Olay or FD Signifier and others on your stream and kind of can see that there's something more nuanced happening here. I'll say as well, I'm not here to defend the root.com. I think they're in black ownership for the first time in a while. Shout out to Ashley Allison. I want to do something fun because we're kind of coming to a close here. And so I'm going to play a little bit of a game with you, Hasan. If your game, I'll tell you the game. I'm going to give you, it's a bit of a rapid fire, 2028 candidates, okay?
All right, let's do it.
I'm going to give you a name and you'll say yes or no. Like, we'll go down the list, all right?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. First name, Rahm Emanuel.
No, but also it sucks because he said he would come on the show. He was like defending me. And not that I wanted him to come on the show, but no.
This is what the section of the clip I watched. Now we have the context. You're going straight into. There's no context. I watched, just to be clear, before anyone says this is taking out of context, I watched the 30 minutes prior to this point to make sure I was not missing any context. So we've done all the Marxist-based class analysis. We've already had him say that the Democrats have not won his vote yet. So let's go.
Oh, definitely no.
Gavin Newsom.
No.
JD Vance.
No, absolutely no. So wait, is this who I'm voting for in 2028? Like, what's
this? Is would you vote for it? Okay, let me tell you, based on what you know about them today, would you vote for these people in 2028?
Oh my God.
So he's framed it, just to be clear. He's framed it exactly like that. It's not, would you vote for them in a primary? Do you support them in general? Like, would you prefer them? He's saying 2028, it's the general. That's what he's saying. So, and now he knows this for the next few people he's asked about. So,
JD Vance, no, I will never vote for a Republican ever.
Gretchen Whitmer.
Maybe. Now we're getting into more comfortable waters. She's too anti-Medicare for all. I think she's like
so maybe
she's linked to the private healthcare industry, but just better than others. Definitely more responsive as a governor. But I'm 50-50.
All right. AOC.
Yes.
Tucker Carlson.
No.
Cory Booker.
No.
Okay, so that, like, in context, if Cory Booker, who is like moderate to like slightly left in the Democratic Party, like the constituency, no, like an absolute no, he wouldn't vote for him. Just to keep that in mind.
Absolutely not.
John Ossoff.
Again, interesting candidate, maybe.
Kamala Harris.
So Ossoff, who is as close as you could probably get to a candidate who could realistically win in the general, who is aligned enough on like core issues with something Hasan, and he's still maybe. And this is on a program where he's speaking to primarily liberals. Like, he's still a mask on for this, and that's what he's saying.
Oh, God. No.
So Kamala Harris, just to be clear, furthest left candidate that was in a general in Hasan's lifetime, if not longer. So that's an absolute no in 2028 if there was in a general.
Pete Buttigieg.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess while we're here, actually, we're talking about candidates. You live in California.
So I mean,
who are you?
there's no following. Like, there's an actual belief. Like, this is how privileged the system is to people like this. People who are just rich enough where nothing realistically affects them. Like, the United States has been so significantly undermined by the Trump administration that there is just going to be probably decades and decades, if not permanent damage, that will affect working class Americans in a real way that their pocketbook feels. And because like your coalition is not strong enough to dominate in the Democratic Party because you can't speak to people who are actually voters, especially in important states. This is the vibe, is that we won't vote for them. You know, we'll just concede to the Republicans. We'll let them win.
Thinking
Everyone can
about for the
wallow.
governor there. I mean, we have a few folks. It's been a bit of an upheaval lately. I mean, we could play the same game. I could give you a couple of names. You can tell me yes, no, and maybe give a little bit of an explanation. So let's start. Katie Porter.
No. Katie Porter was a very interesting candidate. Obviously, like she was able to take over a purple district and was making a name for herself. She had the whiteboard. She would cook all of these like executives. And then even before we found out about like her anger issues, the thing that I care about the most on top of that, because that tells me what your character is. But what I also care about on top of that is like what your attitude is about like what forces you're going to represent, who you're going to.
By the way, anger issues. This is a guy who is screaming at one guyers all day using slurs. Like that tells me a lot about your character, dude. Like, come on. What a virtue signal.
Her rapid change from being someone who was like somewhat pro-worker, pro responsive politics, potentially a Bernie-crat, right, has shifted. She became anti-worker, and I find that to be
when you say
very
rapid change, this is what happens when you win in purple districts. You have to actually listen to your electorate when you're in power. You have to represent everyone, the consensus, not just your pet projects.
dangerous type of politics. So definitely no on Katie Porter.
What about the people's billionaire Tom Steyer?
So I talked to Tom Steyer. I interviewed him, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think he's the most interesting candidate with viability right now in this race. Even before Swalwell's sexual assault allegations came up, and he had to quit the race and also resign from office. Those were like the top three candidates, right? You had Swalwell, you had Porter, and you had Steyer on like the Democrat camp, and then you have Bianco and Hilton, right? The two Republicans. And I was genuinely terrified. I was talking to some other folks that also live in California. We were trying to figure out like what are we going to do here, right? This is such a ridiculous situation we're in, where we can have, because California has the top two primary systems, jungle primary, so we could have a potential general race where the top two candidates were both going to be Republican. Now, obviously, Trump fixed that for us, so shouts out to him. He endorsed one over the other, and then that causes a lot of the Republicans to lean into one, and then also the Swalwell stuff came out. But yeah, I think Steyer, I can't believe I'm saying this, is probably a little bit more responsive than the rest of the candidates are. And I mean, there's another guy in California that I'm backing as well, named Shoykat Chakrabarti, and he's a centimillionaire, right? He's been in this game for a very long time. He's a co-founder of the Justice Democrats, AOC's first chief of staff, right? So he has a really, really solid politics. They have a think tank. They write like incredible policy papers. But what I have realized, or at least maybe this is cope, is that all of those guys that we're voting for on the Democratic Party side, the establishment Democrats, they represent the interests of billionaires and millionaires regardless, even if they themselves are not billionaires or millionaires. So in the case of Tom Steyer, if he's advocating for, single-payer healthcare in the state.
The fact that you say they're representing the billionaires or whatever, like maybe the question might be, one, what can you even expropriate from the billionaires? Like if you expropriated all of the billionaires' wealth, you're not covering most of these state deficits even close, let alone the federal deficits. Like the reality is American capitalism in the current state, that is just not where wealth consolidation is. It's in the general market. It's in assets held by like teachers unions, by normal 401ks. Like that's the realistic problem, is that like these people are they're oftentimes if not looking out for billionaires because they represent immense business opportunity for the states that they're in, right? When they leave with their taxes. And if they move their headquarters, their bases, their companies, then jobs move with them and jobs are lost with them. So like, it's not about just curtailing to them, but you have to actually like, if you're going to do class-based analysis, you have to also acknowledge the electoral realities. Like you can't just go and raid the coffers of billionaires for paltry amounts of income, right? These are not the amount of money you're getting from this is not going to be substantial to, close much, if any, of these tax deficits or fund the kind of programs you want. You're talking about a much more extensive tax protocol that would more be affecting the people the billionaires employ through their companies, not necessarily even them,
of California, that's a very appealing policy for someone like myself. I care about the policies and not the background of the person. So yeah, I think Tom Steyer could be a very interesting governor for the state.
Okay, last one, Xavier Becerra.
So I'm not super familiar with him, because if you haven't reached like a certain level of viability, because there's Ramsey Robinson as well, who's supposed to be like the California PSL candidate. There's Butch Ware, the Green Party candidate as well. And these guys are unfortunately having a very hard time making it out that 1%. A lot of people get mad at me for not like highlighting certain candidates, and I'm like, I don't have a magic wand, right? Like I can't make it happen. People are like, well, what about Zoran? Like you interviewed Zoran when he was at 1%, and it's like, well, I didn't do that on my own. Like maybe Third Way thinks that, and they're terrified, right? But that's not the case. Like Zoran is he's a generational politician. He's very charismatic, but more importantly than that, he had the backing of the DSA New York Machine Working Families Party in a city that is that has worked tirelessly to create this door knocking operation, a city that was much more open minded to Zoran's worldviews, entirely different than the
And again, all that being said, Zoran underperformed more than almost any Democratic candidate in 2025. Like, and it was in a race where the current mayor did not back out until late in the election, and he was running against the most disgraced politician alive in New York City, who cleaned up, by the way, with minority groups, who cleaned up with the working class. So, yeah, man, whatever.
California governor's race, I didn't do that for Zoran. I couldn't do that for any candidate, really, and it's not up to me at all. So I try to make these pragmatic choices. So it's a long way of answering your question that I don't know enough about Xavier.
Okay, last one. You've been consistently critical of Democrats. What will it take for Democrats to win over Hasan Piker?
Oof, so much. I think they have to earn the trust of not only people like myself, but just of the American people. They have to become a party that truly represents the interests of the masses, truly represents the interests of the working class. They have to have 1,000 Zorans and Grand Plattners and people that work in their own specific districts in their own states that are still almost single-mindedly and very stubbornly fighting to express the desires of the masses, fighting to improve their lives materially, and communicating that to as many people as possible to ensure that no Republican ever wins another election ever again.
Hasan Piker, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so the clip that made me want to watch this, not out of context. It's just like it's so functionally crazy that you could have a guy who dubiously represents a very small fraction of the Democratic Party, likely almost only found in safe states that are always going to have Democratic candidates, and somehow he is getting courted positively by Democrats, and he's openly saying, yeah, the further left, some of the farthest left candidates that are available for a presidential general, not primary, I won't vote for them. I mean, it's Democrats deserve what they get at this point, because if you can't even understand who is and isn't an ally, like you don't have to have ideological parity, you don't have to have an agreement on everything, but the inability to even discuss or to know who is on your team fundamentally, it's crazy. So absurd, not out of context clipping, not out of context. I watched the whole thing, not out of context.